Hi, my name is Nevern. I'm a psychologist, and by the end of this video, I hope to have convinced you of the fact that self-care is not selfish. So let's start by saying that I've seen many people in my therapy practice over the years. I've probably seen hundreds of clients, and after seeing hundreds of clients in therapy, you start to realize that the people who aren't championing their highest potential, the people who aren't shining to the degree that they could, the people who aren't being the best versions of themselves, those people are the people who are trying to pour from an empty cup. I know it's a cliche, but really think about this. Pouring from an empty cup doesn't work. It just leaves you and the person you're trying to pour into more depleted. I recently gave a talk at a social welfare organization on parenting styles. And I want you to think about self-care in terms of a parenting style. You get many parents who try to just have expectations for their children without giving them support. We call this an authoritarian parenting style. This is different from an authoritative parenting style. An authoritative parenting style is you have high expectations, you have high standards, you want your child to do really well academically, socially, you want them to be happy, you want them to live a great life, but you also give them support. So you also give them the means to do that, you provide resources, you fund them. So all of that support, all of that warmth and connection is there together with the expectations. This is what separates a parent who is very authoritarian and just wags their finger at a child versus the parent who is authoritative and actually supports the child to meet the high expectations that the parent has. Now, I want you to think about yourself. We are all kind of like parents to ourselves in some way, and we need to learn how to re-parent ourselves. In psychology, there's a whole therapeutic modality dedicated to what's called selective reparenting, taking the unhelpful ways in which we were parented ourselves when we were younger and trying to undo those and trying to redo them in a more helpful way. And one of the unhelpful things that I see in many of my clients is that oftentimes, the people who think that self-care is selfish are the ones who have high expectations, high demands of themselves without providing themselves adequate support. And if you think about it, this is the crux of being an authoritarian parent. It's just that now you're being that parent to yourself. You're continuing the legacy of those who just told you that you had to achieve, who are upset if you didn't, but didn't give you the support you need, the resources, who didn't empathize with you and try to understand why you're struggling. You don't need to repeat that pattern. And in fact, whenever you are trying to take care of yourself, whenever you're trying to make sure that you're okay, I want you to think about yourself as a child and think, if you had a child that you were in charge of, would you just place demands on them? Would you just have expectations? If you think about it, it's unreasonable to have expectations of a child that you're not providing support to. Imagine any child who is well taken care of, they're well fed, the parents make sure they get to bed in time, the parents make sure that they have enough playtime, that they get outdoors, that they get sunlight, that they're stimulated in many ways, that they have friends, that they're heard. The parents who provide that kind of context to that kind of child, they can have the expectations of them to do their homework because they know that they're supporting the child and they can expect the child to do their best with their homework. You need to do the same for yourself. You need to ask yourself, what do I need to thrive? What is the context that I can create in which I can grow? Just like a plant. You can't just expect a plant to grow. You need to provide a context in which it can thrive, a supportive environment. For a plant, a supportive environment means water, a nutrient-dense soil, and sunlight. For human beings, it's slightly different. But you need to think about what that context is for you. And that is the essence of self-care. Because providing that context, providing nutrient-dense soil and sunlight and water, whatever that looks like for you, that's what's going to lead to your growth. That's what's going to lead to you making a positive impact. So that's the first point here, is that in some ways you are a parent to yourself and you need to parent yourself in a way that actually provides a supportive context in which you can grow. Because at the end of the day, the person we speak to the most is ourselves. And so if you want to thrive in the world, you have to protect yourself from yourself. We can be our own worst enemies. Many of us try to protect ourselves from external relationships and the bad energy of other people, but many of us let the bad energy within ourselves go unnoticed. and you are the person you speak to the most, so it can have the most detrimental impact on you. So that's the first point. You need to reparent yourself to know that a supportive environment is also the environment where you can thrive the most. So to take care of yourself, in other words, is to provide a supportive environment where you can thrive, where you can grow, where you can flourish. Now, the second point I want to add here is that something that you can add to your personal growth and self-care and healing journey to make sure that it's not selfish is to add contribution. Many people think, you know what, I'm not adding value to the world, so why should I take care of myself? You need to flip that on its head. Instead of saying, I don't take care of the world, so I shouldn't take care of myself, you should say, I need to take care of myself so that I can take care of the world. If I improve myself, if I get my own home in order, that will allow me to give back, to add value, to find my place under the sun, and to contribute to the world in some way, to lead my field, to contribute in specific ways, to make a positive impact. All of that is only going to happen when you are first and foremost taking care of yourself. In many ways, you're like a car that needs to make a long journey. And if you need to make a long journey with a car, it's best to make sure that it's undergone a service, that it's been taken care of, that there's fuel in the car, that you've checked the tire pressure, and all of that stuff, right? A car needs maintenance. We all take our cars in for service once a year, or hopefully you do, but you're supposed to take it in for service once a year. And a car is a lot simpler than the human mind. The human mind is a lot more complex than a car's engine. And so it needs a lot more maintenance. But many of us don't even do an annual check on our mental health, on how we're doing internally. And that's a mistake, because if a car needs regular maintenance, your mind, your behaviors, your psychology, it needs even more maintenance. And so the point here is that in order to take care of your car, make sure that you're actually using your car for a long distance journey. And more specifically, I want you to make that journey one of contribution. Because when you have purpose, when you have a meaning in life, when you know that your life means something that goes beyond yourself, you'll tend to take care of yourself better, because you know that this is the only vehicle that you have for that journey. So you have to take care of it. So that is the second element, is that you need to take care of your body, because your body is going to be of service to others. That can add a layer of meaning and purpose that's going to help you take care of yourself and to realize that self-care is not selfish. And in fact, self-care can be aligned with the interests of others. There's no reason why your self-improvement should go against the improvement of the world. Those two things can definitely, most certainly, be aligned. So now that I've given you these two reasons, these two broad reasons as to why you should take care of yourself, I want you to think about what self-care is. Self-care historically was a term that many medical practitioners used in the 1950s when they realized that their patients with chronic conditions could actually improve their own health by taking better care of themselves. So eating better, sleeping better, physical movement, all of these things were realized in the 1950s. So these medical practitioners who used to just treat things with medication and surgeries and medical methods started to realize that if a patient is properly taking care of themselves, if they get their habits right, then that self-care can actually contribute a lot more to their medical outcomes than any surgery or medication that can be given at the end of a lack of self-care. So that's the origin of self-care. It used to be used for people with chronic conditions with the advice that they should take care of themselves to help the chronic conditions. Over time, that definition expanded to not just mean people with chronic physical conditions, but to mean anyone. Because these medical practitioners realized that, wait a minute, to improve the health of your body, you don't need to have a medical condition. These good habits, these self-care activities, they can be beneficial for anyone. And so self-care came to start to mean any activity that you can engage in that improves your health and well-being. And now with the mental health revolution, we're starting to see that it's not just about taking physical care of yourself, but also psychological care. And so that's how we're going to define self-care. is that self-care is any activity that you can do, that you can engage in your own life, that you can initiate, that you have the resources to initiate, that will improve your health and well-being in the long term. That means, by definition, that self-care isn't just about doing what you like or what you want. It's not just about pursuing pleasure. So eating a donut, it might not be considered self-care in this definition because eating a donut might not help with your long-term well-being, especially if you're addicted to sugar, if you're addicted to oily foods. That's probably not going to be good for your health and well-being in the long term. So when you're thinking self-care, I don't want you to just think about what will be most pleasurable for me right now. True self-care that isn't selfish, is in ethical relationship to your future self. In other words, true self-care takes care of future you. And that's another reason why it's not selfish, because it's not just the present you saying, I want to eat this, and I want to play video games, and I want to watch social media for hours. True self-care is saying, what is going to be best for future me in the long term? All those future versions of myself that are to come, what can I do today to help them? And that's another way in which self-care is not selfish, because you're not just taking care of your present self, you're taking care of all your future selves. So this is important to remember, is that self-care is any activity that you can engage in, psychologically or physically, that's going to improve your overall health and well-being. Now, think about that physically. If we start with the physical pillar, you don't need to overcomplicate this. Stick to the basics. We know the scientific literature says that adults need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I know most of us don't get that, but if you do get that, it will benefit your brain immensely. One of the most powerful things you can do is to get your sleep right. So fix your sleep, eat more nutritious food, so meaning foods that are high in nutrients, don't overeat, get some physical movement, cardiovascular movement, strength training, do those things, get some daily sunlight, stay away from addictive substances. These are the basics in terms of what you can do physically. Now, all of this stuff is going to also help the psychological pillar, but there are also some things that you can add to the psychological pillar. For example, mindfulness meditation is extremely beneficial to both your health and your well-being in the long term. Gratitude practices, like writing down 3 things a day that you're grateful for, are extremely helpful for improving health and well-being over the long term. We know this through scientific evidence. And then you could also do something like seeing growth opportunities whenever you encounter a challenge, or learning how to take failure as feedback. These are all ways in which you can improve your psychological well-being. And all of these tools will help you to take better care of yourself. And to remind you of the beginning of the video, not just for you, but because you have now added a purpose and a meaning and something bigger than yourself to your mission. You have a noble vision of what the future could be like, and you know that there's work to do and that you could do that work if you do take care of yourself. But only if you take care of yourself, because when people don't take care of themselves, they're sluggish, they wake up with a feeling of dread, they're lethargic, they don't have energy, they don't feel motivated, they feel low, they're hating on themselves, they feel ashamed. This is not the state I want for you. A true state of self-care that allows you to not just be selfish, but to enjoy your life and to make life better for those around you is one where you wake up feeling energetic, inspired, where you feel excited for the day ahead, where you find deep meaning and purpose in the work that you're doing, where you're able to feel so fresh that you can focus and that you can work toward what matters to you. That is the state I want for you, and that's a state that you can only get through self-care. Now, if that's something you want to take very seriously, if you want an evidence-based path to personal growth that not only improves your life, but also improves the lives of others, check out my online membership. You can click on the link in the video description. I've created a membership that is evidence-based, that takes actual tools from therapy that have scientific credibility and teaches you how to use them in a very practical way. And I've aligned these tools so that these tools will not just improve yourself, but they'll also make your life more enjoyable. They'll improve your work, and they'll help you contribute better to the world. If that's something you're interested in, you're welcome to check that out. If not, this has been Nevern, clinical psychologist, and your motivational speaker for the day. I hope that you can, after having watched this video, come to peace with the fact that you need to take care of yourself.